stay in there.
Ah, sorry.
start now?
Ramsø.
Ramsø. Altså aftalen.
Jeg skal stå bag en, så han kan lave det der med tid over det.
Good morning, everybody. We have a lot to do today, so I would like to start as planned. And first of all, I would like to give all of you a very warm welcome to Copenhagen. For the last few months, there has been much talking about peace in Ukraine, with meetings and pre-meetings and briefings about the meetings. And meanwhile, Russia continues its brutal attacks. It must be clear to everyone now, Russia will not stop until they are forced to do so. And they are a threat, not only to Ukraine, but to all of us. Today, we have one major task ahead of us. We have to make our common Europe so strong that war against us becomes unthinkable. And we have to do it now. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and colleagues, it's a great pleasure to welcome you here in Copenhagen. As you all know, this very forum was founded as a response by you, Emmanuel, to Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, created to unite all of us. The purpose has not become less urgent or less relevant today. We have important discussions ahead of us, and none more urgent than the issue of European security. Dear Volodymyr, for almost 4 years, you and your countrymen has been defending Ukraine against a merciless full-scale Russian aggression. You are fighting with outstanding determination. And right now you are fighting for European security, holding back Putin, defending all Europeans. You have done what no one thought possible, and you support our steadfast support. We are around 50 leaders here today from all over Europe. We represent very different countries. We have our own interests, our own headaches, and our own wishes for the future. I know that for some of you, the threat from Russia is very clear and very present. For others, it still seems further away. But none of us can no longer be naive. The war was never just about Ukraine. It is about Europe. All our nations, all our citizens, our values, and our freedom. And please just take one look at the history of our continent. From the expansion of the Russian Empire to Soviet tanks rolling across several borders during the Cold War, shattering hopes of freedom. And recent history tells us the exact same story. So why shouldn't it happen again? Russia is now converting into a war economy, using every opportunity to intimidate, to threaten, and to divide us. Unfortunately enabled by China, with soldiers from North Korea and drones from Iran. And I see no signs that Putin and Russia's imperial fever dream stops with Ukraine. On the positive side, many European nations are ready to do what is necessary to support peace in Ukraine and in Europe. But peace with Russia can only be achieved through strength. We have to strengthen Ukraine and weaken Russia with more sanctions. We have to be able to finance the armed forces in Ukraine. All of us have to deliver more weapons, more ammunition, and we have to do it faster. Nowhere it will make a greater impact for European security than at the front lines in Ukraine. It's not charity, what we're doing in Ukraine. It is a direct defense of our continent. And at the same time, we have to rearm ourselves, Europe. I know that almost everybody have increased their military budgets massively over the last years. And we have taken very important steps in the European Union, in Europe in general, and in NATO. So, in other words, we are on our way, but we have to move much faster. We have to learn from Ukraine, your sense of urgency, building an incredible defense industry in just a couple of years. We must take that lesson and we have to speed up. But building a stronger military is not enough. We need more than that. Because Russia has intensified its use of hybrid means in Europe. And we face an enemy that uses all kinds of tools. One day it is military drones. Another day it's migrants being pushed across the borders. They are targeting critical infrastructure. We see the fight with misinformation, all with the purpose to create uncertainty and lack of trust, and attempts to interfere in democratic elections. Security is, of course, not only a question about military means. It is a matter of our hearts and minds. And in a time where democracy is under pressure around the world, we need to show that we deliver for our societies, that we as political leaders are able to help our people to tackle their challenges in everyday life. Our citizens need jobs and economic security. They need healthcare, education for their kids, affordable food, opportunities for their future. That is why we need to build a stronger Europe economically as well. We have to create the jobs for the future. We have to reduce our dependencies. We have to invest in new technologies and source the critical raw materials that are necessary. And by the way, we have to take much stronger action on migration. We have to strengthen our borders. Uncontrolled migration is changing our societies, and it is our citizens that pays the price. Who can enter and stay in our country? It has to be a democratic decision. Before I pass the floor, there is one thing I want all of you to remember. Back in 2022, when this political family was established, when Russia launched its full-scale invasion in Ukraine, Putin wanted at least three things. He wanted to capture Kiev, he wanted to overthrow the Ukrainian government, and he wanted to tear Europe apart. Today, after almost 4 years of full-scale war, after spending billions of dollars sacrificing thousands of Russian lives, Putin has not succeeded in any of that. The war is a Russian failure. First and foremost, thanks to you, Volodymyr, to every brave Ukrainian man and woman fighting for our freedom, but also to every nation supporting you. Europe is strong when we decide to be, and we need to make it much stronger. So therefore, dear colleagues, welcome once again, and let us use this opportunity to provide the next concrete solutions to show the way forward for Europe. Thank you, and I would like to pass on the floor to you. Antonio.
Eh bien, bonjour. Tout d'abord, je veux remercier Maître Fredriksen pour nous accueillir ici, à Copenhagen, pour cette 6e réunion de notre communauté politique européenne. Et tout d'abord, je veux féliciter Maia Sandu, la présidente de Moldavie, par l'écrasante victoire que les forces démocratiques et pro-européennes ont obtenue dimanche dernier en Moldavie. Cette victoire, c'est une victoire pas seulement de Moldavie, c'est une victoire de la démocratie qui a démontré sa capacité de résister à les manœuvres d'interférence des forces étrangères. Et une victoire des libertés des Moldaves de dire qu'ils veulent choisir et peuvent choisir son destin. Et c'est aussi une victoire de notre Europe parce que le choix était très clair dans la direction européenne de la Moldavie. Je veux aussi féliciter le président d'Azerbaïjan et le Premier ministre d'Arménie. Je crois que la paix que vous avez obtenue, c'est un grand moment pour notre Europe. Et ça démontre que c'est possible de bâtir la paix et qu'il faut qu'on fasse notre travail pour la paix. C'est pour ça qu'on soutient l'Ukraine. Parce que soutenir l'Ukraine, ce n'est pas soutenir la guerre. C'est soutenir le droit de l'Ukraine à une paix durable, à une paix juste. Et c'est pour ça qu'on doit se mobiliser tous et toutes pour continuer à soutenir l'Ukraine. Du point de vue militaire, du point de vue politique, du point de vue diplomatique, du point de vue économique. Parce que ce qui est en jeu en Ukraine, ce n'est pas seulement le droit de l'Ukraine à être un pays libre et souverain. C'est en fait le droit international. C'est en fait les valeurs inscrites dans la Charte des Nations Unies qui sont en cause. Le droit à un pays souverain, à l'intégrité territoriale, au respect des frontières internationalement reconnues. Et c'est pour ça qu'on doit se bâtir. Parce que si la force de la Russie tient une victoire en Ukraine, aucun pays au monde peut rester sûr sur la capacité du droit international faire face à la menace de la force et à la menace de la guerre. C'est sûrement pour ça que dans toute notre réunion, sécurité et résilience ont été toujours présents dans notre ordre du jour. Et toujours, une fois encore, l'intérêt des différents leaders sur les sujets de sécurité et résilience a été tel qu'on a même besoin d'organiser 2 tables rondes sur ces sujets. Et ça veut dire qu'il nous faut faire un effort pour bâtir une défense collective, pour assurer la sécurité des Européens, pour finir avec la guerre en Ukraine, pour finir avec la menace de la Russie sur notre continent, parce qu'il nous faut concentrer dans d'autres enjeux, notamment le développement de notre continent et de nos sociétés. Sécurité, ça veut dire aussi sécurité économique. Il nous faut sécuriser notre chaîne de valeur, l'accès à matières primaires critiques, mais aussi la sécurité de notre chaîne de valeur. Et évidemment, on ne peut pas ignorer des sujets comme migration qui sont au cœur de notre débat dans notre société. On est une plateforme informelle et on veut le rester. Mais si on regarde ce qu'on a fait dans les 5 dernières réunions, on peut identifier que dans ces cadres de la communauté politique européenne, on a plusieurs projets. Le premier a été la coalition F-16 qui a mobilisé un conjoint de volontés et des pays pour soutenir la capacité de défense aérienne de l'Ukraine. On a travaillé beaucoup sur la cybersécurité. On a travaillé beaucoup aussi pour supporter Moldova. Et je crois que ça, c'est quelque chose qui nous honore à tous. Et aujourd'hui, la France prend une nouvelle initiative de bâtir une coalition contre la drogue. Ça, c'est une question centrale qu'on doit prendre en grande attention. Parce que c'est une demande qui est soutenue par un grand problème de santé publique, mais qui en fait engage tout un réseau de criminalité qui défie la sécurité de notre continent, de nos sociétés, et qui fait accroître la violence dans notre société. Donc, je crois que cette formule de la communauté politique européenne, qui ne veut pas remplacer ni notre alliance militaire, ni l'Union européenne, ni remplacer le Conseil d'Europe, ni de remplacer d'autres institutions où on est ensemble, c'est une communauté qui est la démonstration qu'on a une volonté politique d'ensemble. Et ça, c'est très, très, très important, et plus important que jamais dans le monde d'aujourd'hui, où plusieurs acteurs internationaux essayent de bouleverser l'ordre international. quelques-uns par la force de la guerre, d'autres mettre en cause les règles du commerce international, d'autres mettant en cause des engagements collectifs qu'on a besoin pour faire face au changement climatique. Mais nous, ici, tous ensemble, on peut dire que ceux qui sont dans l'Union européenne, ceux qui ne sont pas dans l'Union européenne, ceux qui veulent rentrer dans l'Union européenne, ceux qui ont voulu sortir de l'Union européenne, ceux qui ne veulent pas ni rentrer, ni rester, ni être en l'Union européenne, tous ensemble, on est Europe et ensemble, on veut travailler ensemble pour la paix, le développement et la prospérité de notre société et de nos citoyens. Donc, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, dear Mette. I think everybody is very, very glad that how you hosting us here in Copenhagen. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Volodymyr.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, dear Matt. Dear friends, we are all now in a new reality, and everyone, I think, understands this, even those who may not want to admit it yet. The recent drone incidents across Europe are a clear sign that Russia still feels bold enough to escalate this war. And it was never just about Ukraine. Russia has always aimed to break the West and Europe in particular. Today, their strategy is simple: to divide Europe, to ignite arguments, to prevent us from finding common ground. And I believe we must do the exact opposite of what Russia expects. We must act together, and we must act with strength. First, our guys are already here in Denmark, and there are experienced Ukrainians who know how to detect and shoot down attack drones, and they have already begun deploying their mission, and we are ready to share this experience with you, partners, and this is just the beginning, the first step on the path toward an effective drone wall to protect all of Europe. Please, let's work together on coordinated solutions that will make this happen. Second, when we talk about the drone wall, we are talking about all of Europe, not just on one country. If the Russians dare to launch drones against Poland or violate the airspace of northern European countries, it means this can happen anywhere. In Western Europe, in the south, we need fast and effective response and defense forces that know how to deal with drones. And please keep joining the Pearl program. It really helps our defense. Some countries are already part of it, thank you, and it's very important that others join too. This program supports not only us, but also strengthens ties between Europe and the United States of America. Third, we must remember that the root of all these problems is Russia's war. Russia still has the resources to keep fighting, and that's not right. But we know the right steps. A 19th package of sanctions against Russia for the war is urgently needed. We also need to seriously think how to truly down Russia's entire oil trade infrastructure, because that's what fuels their war machine. Right now, we are seeing that even tankers already under sanctions are still being used by Russia. That has to stop. And let's also place more sanctions against captains and crews of shadow fleet vessels, as well as against the owners of the relevant companies. And we need to think about placing sanctions on Russian oil terminals and the rest of their mainland infrastructure. We should also support President Trump's call to stop buying Russian oil here in Europe. It's short-sighted to go against the USA. And the guys from Hungary need to hear this clearly. Energy from the US and other partners can fill the gap on the European market. Next, we need to finally complete 100% the work on security guarantees. We have already done a lot, and I'm grateful for that. Thanks to you, dear leaders. And now we need to put everything on paper and fully prepare every detail. Security guarantees for Ukraine can already work now. They directly support our army. But overall, every nation in Europe deserves real security guarantees. The model of the security guarantees that works for us will work for you too. And we propose to eventually expand all effective models to others. And finally, I want to congratulate, as speakers before me, I want to congratulate Maya Sandu on the victory. Maya, my congratulations in Moldova's parliamentary elections. These were very, very important elections. Europe has won. Moldova has won. And thank you to everyone who helped to secure fair elections. Now it's time to move forward. Supporting Moldova, Ukraine, and the Western Balkans on their path to EU membership is critical. We need real progress. Ukraine has completed the screening process. We are ready to open Cluster 1, and this must be done just as agreed. This will definitely strengthen the overall situation. Thank you so much. Slava Ukraini. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Volodymyr. And now we are trying something new in this format. So therefore, I will ask Prime Minister Keir Starmer and President Emmanuel Macron and President Maya Sandu and Prime Minister Donald Tusk to go to the podium, where Keir will lead us through a discussion between our four colleagues.
Yes, I think, is this on? Right, let us make a start, and it's really good to be here, colleagues. Volodymyr, it's fantastic that you are here, and as Meta said, this has been nearly 4 long years for brave Ukrainians fighting, and I, for one, have been particularly struck with the severity of the attacks on civilians, particularly in recent weeks and months, on a daily basis. So it's very good you're here. Maya, it is fantastic that you are here. A great victory for you in Moldova, but also a massive victory for Europe as well in the face of interference from Russia. So it is really, really good to have you on the panel here this morning. And I think, Meta and others, we've seen in recent weeks the appetite that Putin has to not only rain down on Ukraine, but also to take action and to interfere right across Europe in many different ways, whether that's in relation to our airspace, whether it's cyber or other attacks that have been going on. They are unrelenting, and they show an appetite to continue this, and we must fight it with everything that we have. And it's a reminder for all of us, Volodymyr, that this is not just a question of Ukrainian sovereignty, it's a question of the values and freedoms of all of us, particularly in Europe, and that we are all in this fight in relation to the Russian aggression. We've done a lot of work on the Coalition of the Willing. I'm not going to go through that here, other than to say that we must always remind ourselves that the Coalition of the Willing, the security guarantees, what we've done to try and ensure that if there is a ceasefire, it is just and lasting, mustn't sort of seduce us into thinking that the work is over in terms of supporting Ukraine now. And so the first point really is to be really clear that we must continue that support for Ukraine, notwithstanding the work of the coalition of the willing. And that means putting Ukraine in the strongest possible position. And that then means more on air defences, more on long range and anti-drone attacks. And of course, the work that we're doing on the reparations loan in relation to the Russian assets, which has been really important work led very ably and very smartly in terms of the progress that we're making there. And of course, as we continue to strengthen the position of Ukraine, we must do that in conjunction with and alongside the work we're doing with President Trump and others in this. The second thing is that we must always look to strengthen NATO. We had an excellent summit earlier this year, Mark, very, very successful, where I think NATO emerged at the end of that summit stronger than we went in, more united, with real resolve and focus. And we need to keep that because, you know, whether it's air defences in Poland, where we, the UK, sent planes across, whether it's the work that we've had to do in the last week or so here with NATO allies working with you to counter the drones. That means that we're here on a beautiful day having our meeting, which wasn't necessarily guaranteed this time last week. I think that shows that we have to make sure that through the framework of NATO we support each other against this aggression and interference. And then finally, we must keep up this pressure on Putin. The economic pressure is having an effect, and we need to continue that pressure through further sanctions, bearing down on energy in particular, and on the shadow fleet. So on all those fronts, supporting Ukraine in the fight, absolutely clear in our support of NATO allies and others, and then bearing down on Putin. So I wanted just to open with that. Emmanuel, can I come to you next, and then we'll come around the panel.
Thank you, Keir. Thank you very much, Mette, for once again organizing this summit. And let me just tell you, before we jump to the situation in Ukraine, as you mentioned and framed it, Keir, that it's clear that this format as well is the right place to deal with so many conflicts or hard situations, and we are focused on the Ukrainian situation, given the aggression war launched by Russia. But Antonio was right as well to highlight the peace treaty signed between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I think this is a great achievement, and I want to congratulate the two leaders. And we are very, as well, focused on what's happening in Caucasus and Western Balkans. And this is the solidarity of this continent. And once again, given this, I would say, holistic approach we have to do for this common place we have, Europe, the elections in Moldova were a great achievement. And Maya, once again, congratulations, because this is a test case for our resilience. We will revert on these topics later today. But the capacity to resist to the interferences and the misinformation coming from Russia was clearly at the core of your campaign, and you resisted. And I think it's very interesting for all of us as well to have your clear feedback and the lessons learned from this victory, because this is something which is useful to be implemented by the rest of the club, because now we have interferences in all elections. And I can tell you, because I had interferences in my two elections, 2017 and 2022, and quite efficient, I have to say, but not successful, but less aggressive than the one in Moldova. As for Ukraine, Volodymyr made it very clear in his statement, and I think the conclusion of your initial speech, Mette, was very important. We are at a moment where Russia is not clearly getting its main objectives. It's not a 3-week special operations. They didn't get Kyiv. They didn't change the regime. I would add to that, two great friends joined NATO, which is a big strategic defeat for Russia on top of it. Now the question is how, not just to sustain the war efforts, but clearly change the dynamic and help Ukraine in this context. I have to say, altogether, we worked very hard during the past few months, and I think the situation is much better today than it was at the beginning of the year. At the beginning of the year, our fear was to have a sort of very rapid peace, and we had some doubts about the level of support of the United States. Now, first, we built the coalition of the willings. A large part of you are member of it, and I think this is a great achievement of the past few months, and you mentioned it here. But we had the clear planification of and commitments the day after a truce or a peace treaty or a ceasefire to have a robust and long-standing peace. And it's very important in terms of sustainable support to the Ukrainian army and the level of commitment we are ready to provide. Second, we managed collectively to re-engage with the United States. And the statements of the President of the United States last week are a huge change if you compare them with your presence in the Oval Office a few months ago. So, I mean, it's very important because for me it's a concrete case of countering the misinformation spread by Russia. No, Russia is not winning. No, Ukraine is not losing this war, and the situation is very different. And I think there is the same approach now regarding the conflict. And it's part as well of the frustration of the US president vis-à-vis the absence of commitment of Russia. And President Trump took several initiatives to re-engage with President Putin and to go to the table of negotiation. And it's now clear that all these words where President Putin was saying, I'm ready to negotiate peace, were not totally a sincere commitment. So now the key points for all of us are, number one, to follow and to step up and to scale up in terms of support vis-à-vis Ukraine. Air defense systems, drones, and I mean the level of innovation and efficiency of the drone system is very impressive, and Volodymyr was very clear on the level of support and financing they need in order to be efficient on the ground. And this is one of the best ways to change precisely the situation and gain some territories, recover some territories. And third, long-range missiles. So let's focus on these three categories, as you mentioned as well here, in terms of financing, capacities to deliver, and we are working hard to accelerate as well the key deliveries in that, but accelerate as well the common projects and the common financing on these three issues. In parallel, in order to put pressure on Russia, in order to create more incentives to come back at the table of negotiations, we have our sanctions, and the 19th sanctions package proposed by the Commission was a very important one. We coordinate, we step up, and we are more and more efficient. And I want to insist on the shadow fleet, as you mentioned. Because following our key figures, today 30 to 40% of the war effort is financed through the revenues of the shadow fleet. It represents more than 30 billion euro. So it's extremely important to increase the pressure on this shadow fleet because it will clearly reduce the capacity to finance this war effort for Russia. So we put a series of sanctions on them, I mean on the boats and on the insurance companies, harbors and so on. But now we have clearly a way to increase the pressure by coordinating a holistic approach on this shadow fleet. And what we did in the past few days with our Navy, just in order to make controls and to make sure that it was a vessel we identified, a series of vessels, and to be sure they were compliant with international rules, delivered very concrete results. First, because you can identify the presence of a shadow fleet on your coast. Second, because you can make sure that they are compliant with or not with international rules. But third, and it's very important, because you kill the business model by detaining, even for days or weeks, these vessels and forcing them to organize themselves differently and killing the efficiency of the business model. Because this model has been organized even before 22, but is now totally industrialized. And I suggest that in the framework of the coalition of the willing, with close coordination with NATO, we work to see how to optimize this common action. But just to tell you, the vessels we clearly identified, on which we made the checkings, and now we have a legal action, was declared in under a fake pavilion, but was exactly the same which was controlled by Estonia last March, for the same reasons. And as we stop them during 1-2 weeks' time, we completely break the efficiency of the organization. So shadow fleet is a very good target if we want to improve our efficiency to reduce these capacities. And I think this is a very important step forward in order to increase our pressure on Russia. Obviously, the objective of that is to allow in parallel Ukraine to recover territories, but as well to increase this pressure on Russia to come back at the table of negotiation. My last point, regarding all the provocations we have in Poland, in Estonia, and I want to reiterate our sincere solidarity, I think we had a fair reaction by Article 4 on NATO, more coordination, and as well additional capacities. We sent some additional Rafales and so on. And it's very important as well to go till the end of the inquiries on what happened in Denmark and for some others, because it's very important to make full clarity. I think the main answer should be more unpredictability and more strategic ambiguity. And I think it's very important to have a clear message. Drones which would violate our territories are just taking a big risk. They can be destroyed, full stop. And we are not here to provide the full notice. We will do what we have to do to preserve our air integrity and our territorial integrity. And for the aircraft, we have a process under the coordination of NATO. And I think this process will create as well more unpredictability. Deterrence should be key to preserve our consistency. But the message which is very important to convey from this meeting is that we are ready and we are in the position to preserve our air and our territorial integrity. We are ready on the eastern flank of NATO, and we are ready at the same time and on top of that, and without reducing this commitment, to provide security guarantees for Ukraine. This is the same approach, and all these approaches are clearly compliant, and it was fairly assessed by the Secretary General of NATO. Thank you, Keir.
Thank you, Emmanuel. And I think this focus on the shadow fleet is so important. We need to intensify that, particularly in light of what's happened in the last few days. So really important. Donald, can I come to you? Because obviously we saw the incursion of drones and the reaction to that. So over to you, really, because we cannot ignore the fact that over recent weeks and months, there has been, at the very least, an increased appetite for recklessness on behalf of Putin. So, Donald.
Thank you. I will be very brief because I think from my point of view, everything is more or less clear when it comes to the whole war context. First of all, again, congratulations. We were very happy together with Manuel and Friedrich to be there just before your election, and we felt how difficult the situation was, and still is, of course. But your example, this is a good lesson for all of us, because it means that if you are determined enough, if you are courageous enough, you can win. Also, if you are, small Moldova, you can win against Russia, because it was in fact, the elections in Moldova, not only in Moldova, as you said, but in Moldova it was a very spectacular example. The elections, it is also a part of a very untypical war we live in fact. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I said that that the post-war epoch had ended and that we entered the pre-war epoch. Unfortunately, it is no longer the case because, in fact, we are in time of war today. And for me, your lesson, but also what we experience in Poland with all these provocations from the Russians and Belarusians. For me, it means that today it's absolutely obvious that we have to stop all this kind of illusions. The first illusion was and is that there's no war. It's in some of us, we like this definition like full-scale aggression or incidents or provocation. No, it's war. A new type of war, very complex, but it's war. Shadow fleet. Now we have signals. The last one was, I received a message from Warsaw. We have another incident now close to Szczecin port. 2 days ago it was an incident close to our Petro-Baltic platform and our pipeline. Both are Russian vessels. And in fact, we have a new incidents in our region, I mean Baltic Sea, every single week. It's almost every day. We have the drones attack or provocation was the most spectacular one when it comes to the Polish side. But in fact, we have similar provocation also every single day on our border with Belarus. You know the situation, but it's nothing. War is not an abstraction now for us, because we have on our border with Belarus, we have more than 100 attempts per day, and it's some kinetic actions against our soldiers on our border with victims also. It's our daily routine now. This permanent confrontation with Belarusian services and this weaponized illegal migration, really well organized by Putin and Lukashenko. It is a kind of war also. Estonia, dozens of violations. This was not the first attempt, I mean the violations of the Estonian airspace. This is why it is a war. We are also a target for the Russian aggression, not only with the hybrid tools, but also when it comes to political goals, intentions. And it's clear, not only in Moscow, I think that the whole West is under threat. And aggression against Ukraine is just the first phase of this new approach. Second, we can hear in I think all capitals in Europe this narrative. This is okay. If it is war, it is not our war. It is our war. Okay, Ukraine is in the front line now, but in fact we have this aggressive actions, provocations, etc. And all of us are targets, the possible targets for these attacks. It's, Kir, you know this also personally, how strange and how dangerous they can be, also physically, kinetically against us. It is our war, and if Ukraine loses, it means our failure. I have no doubts in a mid-term or long-term perspective. And the third illusion is also very well prepared by Putin's propaganda, is that we are not able to win this war. That it is impossible for Ukraine and for all of us to win this war. It's an absurd. The only advantage, the Russian advantage, the only one, is mentality. We are much bigger than them. You know, the GDP of Poland will be comparable to the Russian one of Poland in 2 years. Economically, they have no chance against us. Our population is almost 500 million. Together with UK have 500 million against 150. We are much richer, technologically, much better prepared. The only Russian advantage is here and here. I mean, they are ready to fight. They are ready to sacrifice something. They are ready to suffer. And the psychological advantage, this is why we are so, sometimes we are so, you know, okay, not decisive enough and not determined enough. And this is why the Moldovan example is so important. It's not only a symbolic one, but also something very practical. If you are determined enough, you can win. And our yesterday discussion about drone wall, about our reactions, should we destroy the Russian objects over Ukraine or in our airspace, I think it's absolutely clear that the most important and the last step in our efforts how to help Ukraine to win this war is more determination. Money is not the problem. I mean, it's always the problem, but compared to, sorry, not the biggest. No. And this is my appeal. And as I said yesterday, I am not interested in escalation. I am the last one here who is interested in escalation, because we will be the first victim of the war. And for Poland, peace and ceasefire, this is something absolutely the highest priority for us. But we know, not only because of our history, because of geography, but also we know something about the Russian intentions and plans. We know that if they win against Ukraine, it is also in the future the end of my country and of Europe. I have no doubt. And this is why we have to be as determined as Volodymyr and his people, and as Maya and her nation. Thank you.
Maya, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your support and for the kind words. The elections we had on September 28th were not simple elections. This was a test for a democracy under attack. Russia spent hundreds of millions of euros in these elections to illegally finance political parties. Well, they've been supporting some political parties for decades, but only in the last 2 years they've created at least 7 new political parties in Moldova. We have it's very easy, as it should be in Moldova, to create a political party. Of course, all these attempts to destabilize the country, all these attempts to hire people on the ground, to produce disinformation in addition to what we have been receiving from Moscow. And the lessons that we have learned is that exposure and prevention work. These are the 2 lessons that we have learned, and this is what has helped us. Because we have been exposing, and it's not only the government institutions, but it's also the press, the international press and the local press. For a year, the press has infiltrated And then later one showed how Russia has been hiring people in Moldova, paying them monthly salaries, teaching them how to create thousands or hundreds of accounts, and then sending them the information that they need to post. This is what was happening, you know, in very big scales. Like the BBC investigation found a network of at least 90 TikTok accounts which produced thousands of videos with 23 million views for a population of 2.4 million people. So we had many such examples, and people could see it and they could understand the threat. And then the prevention, I have to say that after last year's experience, which was very dramatic during the referendum and the presidential elections, our institutions worked really, really well this time. They disrupted all these financial schemes of Russia. They confiscated the money. People who were dealing with this, they got arrested. All those who organized, were trying to organize the vote buying schemes, people could see them on TV. People could see that the money has been confiscated. So the prevention was really, really useful. It is not easy because Russia is using cryptocurrency more and more, and this is where we need to work together to stop the illicit funding, and especially when it comes to cryptocurrency. But Russia had two objectives for these elections. One was to capture Moldova through, this was the maximalistic objective, to capture Moldova through these elections, or at least to destabilize the country and to, to discredit the results. And it has failed because both the state institutions worked very hard, but also it was a whole of society response. And of course, I'm very grateful for your support. The support on intelligence sharing was very useful. Many people, many countries in this room helped us. The cyber defense, we were in a very difficult situation with cyber defense. We managed to fix it 2 days before the election. So we had only 2 days to test it. It was that dramatic. We have learned our lesson. Now we have to work very hard to make sure that we don't get in this situation anymore. Of course, the economic support that we have received, because Moldova's economic situation is not good. The economy is affected by the war next door. The political solidarity that you have shown, all these things, the support for Stratcom, all these things have helped a lot. We have learned a lot of lessons. We're ready to share them with all the countries which are concerned that the elections might be under threat because of Russia. But also we hope that our experience is going to encourage other countries, because a small and fragile democracy like the Moldovan one has resisted the big resources of Russia, and if Moldova could do it, then everybody can do it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.